today's presentation, we will be looking at autism spectrum disorder, or ASD. So, to get a better understanding of ASD, we will be increasing our awareness of what it is, how it is diagnosed, the impact of the condition, and common approaches that can be effective. So, what is ASD? Autism spectrum disorder is a developmental disorder which affects the way a person communicates with and relates to other people and the world around them. The way in which people are affected varies from one individual to another by age and intellectual functioning. This is why it's a spectrum disorder. Estimates tell us that around 1 in 100 children have ASD, which means there are children with an ASD in most schools, whether diagnosed or not. In ASD, there is believed to be an abnormal development of circuits in the brain that are responsible for integrating social interaction and communicative skills.
You know somebody with autism. Autism is much more common than most people think. About 1 in 100 people have autism. That's more than 700,000 in the UK alone. So chances are that someone you know, or work with, or love has the condition. What is autism? Autism is a lifelong developmental disability that affects how we communicate with and relate to others, and it affects how we make sense of the world around us. Lots of things that people take for granted, like body language and metaphors, can be confusing and alienating for us. Autism is a spectrum condition, so that whilst we all share certain difficulties, our autism will affect us in different ways. Some of us have been to university and hold down jobs, whilst others need a lifetime of specialist support. Asperger's syndrome is a form of autism. People with Asperger's syndrome are often of average or above average intelligence. They have fewer problems with speech, but may still have difficulties with understanding and processing language. What is autism like? For us, the world can be a confusing mass of people, events, and places. Sometimes we struggle to make sense of the world, and this can make us anxious. Every person with autism is different. That's what makes it so difficult to understand. But some of the characteristics that we have include a love of routines, sensory issues such as noises or smells or light, and having special interests. Some of us experience difficulties in understanding and relating to other people, and having a social life can be that much harder for us. For some of us, for example, going to a party can be really hard because we don't know what's going to happen or who will be there, and it often gets too noisy, which can be upsetting. Other people with autism have trouble reading facial expressions, understanding jokes or sarcasm, or common phrases like break a leg. Even phrases people use every day like it's cool can be disorientating. You think they're asking you to turn the air conditioning off. Many people with autism don't look disabled. Parents of children with autism often say that people simply think their child is naughty, while we adults find that we are misunderstood. That is why it is called a hidden disability. What causes autism? The exact cause of autism is still being investigated, but research suggests that a combination of factors, genetic and environmental, may account for changes in brain development. Autism is not caused by a person's upbringing or their social circumstances. Is there a cure? There is no cure for autism, but there are interventions that enable learning and development which may be helpful. You can find out more by going to www.autism.org.uk/approaches.
So, what are the signs of ASD? The above poster can be helpful to remember some of the key traits. We know that social interaction and verbal communication can be difficult for someone with ASD. Some examples include a lack of interest in others, difficulty making friends, and dominating conversations rather than having a back and forth conversation. Another trait is having a limited imagination, so it might be difficult to think outside of the box or see things from other people's perspectives. Gestures and non-verbal communication can be impaired in people with ASD, so although they may be really excited, angry, or upset about something, it may be difficult to identify that emotion in their body language and facial expressions. Similarly, they may struggle to read other people's non-verbal communication. N is for narrow range of interests, routines, and repetitive behaviours. Some examples of these things include having special interests that consume a large amount of their focus and becoming distressed when routines are disrupted or changed without warning. And S is for unusual sensory responses, which means that someone with ASD might react to sensory information from the environment slightly differently to others. Let's think about the impact of living with ASD. To start with, a child with ASD might have sensory sensitivities, so clothing might feel uncomfortable, food smells and tastes might be overwhelming, and noises might be startling and distracting. Bullying can be an issue, as the child may stand out as being different to their peers. It may impact on their self-esteem and mental health when a child feels ostracised from their peers. A child may equally be vulnerable and easily led and try to buy friendships. A child may not be able to pick up on social cues, for example, if someone is not interested in their topic of conversation, if they have upset or if they have angered someone. They may not see their role played in upsetting someone and not show remorse or empathy in response. Sometimes social hierarchies are not detected, so a child could come across as being rude. A child may say what they are really thinking and be brutally honest without regard to how that might impact on another person's feelings. A child may insist on doing the same thing each day, and disruption to this routine can cause upset. A child may struggle to focus on tasks that are not on their terms. They may spend time thinking or talking about their specific interests and find it hard to focus on learning about something else. It might be challenging to work in large groups where there are lots of different opinions and ideas on how to do something. The child might try to take over the task or get upset if peers do not want to do things their way. So how is ASD diagnosed? ASD is diagnosed using the DSM-5 criteria by a suitably trained clinician. For the strict diagnostic criteria to be met, the individual would need to have shown evidence of significant difficulties with social communication and interaction, and have rigid and repetitive behaviours. These symptoms must have been present since early on in the developmental period, so since they were born basically, and they must cause impairment to the individual's daily life in a variety of settings. It's important that other factors that might cause similar difficulties, such as developmental delay or intellectual disabilities, are ruled out before a diagnosis is made. So, let's find out a little more about some of the symptoms of ASD. Social interaction. This basically refers to how we involve ourselves with others and how we get on with others. As you can see in the slide, someone with ASD would struggle to identify subtle social cues that many of us automatically register, and as a result, they can have difficulty saying the right thing in a social situation. This can lead to all sorts of difficulties, from falling out with friends, to causing offence, to being disrespectful to authority figures. We are generally social beings, and many of us enjoy immersing ourselves around other people and talking to others. Many individuals with ASD are very content in their own company and may not choose to spend time or share stories with other people. They may not see the point in small talk either. On the other hand, some people with ASD will talk excessively about things of interest or importance to them, but conversation can be very one-sided, and they may not show any interest in the other person's responses or opinions. Social communication is all about how we interpret what others are saying and how we express ourselves to communicate a message to others. People with ASD can have real difficulties in this area, as quite often people do not say what they mean. Understanding what someone has said is a complicated thing which involves us linking what has been said verbally, what a person's body language indicates, and the general context to determine whether a comment such as "nice hat" is really a compliment or a sarcastic insult, for example. Someone with ASD might miss these subtle social cues and take what is said literally. As a result, non-literal language, such as metaphors, similes, idioms, humour, sarcasm, or questions and statements with implied meaning, can be lost on someone with ASD. The way in which someone with ASD expresses themselves to others might also be impaired. For example, they may avoid eye contact, face away from you when speaking, or conversely, they may invade your personal space. They might speak with an accent or with a sing-song quality to their voice, or they may only speak in one tone, even when talking about something they are passionate or excited about, for example. Imagination helps us understand the world and predict and see the perspective of other people. Children with ASD are unable to do this to any great extent. In children with ASD, the development of pretend play may occur very slowly, in unusual ways, or not at all. Problems with imagination make the world a very uncertain place. It makes it difficult to plan, cope with changes, predict others' responses, empathise, and problem solve. Children with ASD often find reassurance in setting up routines and patterns that they can control and prefer predictability to uncertainty. This means that children with ASD cannot easily make sense of sequences and events, engage in repetitive activities, may become distressed if a familiar routine changes, may impose their routines on others, may prefer sameness and will often resist new experiences, find it hard to work out what other people are going to do and cannot make sense of why other people do what they do, struggle to understand how their behaviour may affect others and may not understand social hierarchies, have no or reduced empathy, struggle with imaginative play, pretending and creativity, find it hard to make free choices, and will often pay particular attention to details and struggle to see the bigger picture. So many children with ASD, as we've just found out, find it difficult to cope with changes, and they prefer the predictability of a routine and cope better with structured activities. Children with ASD often work better within predictable routines. By ensuring consistent routines during the day, within lessons, and in the way in which you interact, you will help to alleviate worry and anxiety. Because of the difficulties that children with ASD often have around predicting events, it's essential that the day's activities are planned ahead and communicated to the child. So, here's a question for you. Why do you think a child with ASD might show repetitive behaviours? It may help with self-regulation, which helps the child become calm and overcome situations of stress or upset. It may demonstrate excitement. It may provide the child with an escape route when they are overworked or wound up. It may just make the child happy. Some children find the behaviour pleasurable even if causing injury to themselves. It may provoke a reaction from others, which may reinforce the behaviour further. Or it may be a way of avoiding a task or activity. It's also important to note that some children learn to monitor their own behaviour so they can engage in them in a safe environment such as at home, rather than you might not see that in school. Children with ASD have difficulties with predicting how others feel or how they will react. This is a core impairment of ASD, and allowances should always be made. The child with ASD may not recognise when their behaviour has upset someone and have no concept that somebody else feels differently to them. Many will have difficulties in naming or explaining their own feelings and emotions. In fact, discussions around this can be very distressing for the child who genuinely does not understand the concept of others' emotions.
The 7 senses are sight, hearing, touch, smell, taste, balance, also known as our vestibular sense,
and body awareness, also known as proprioception. There is also an 8th sense called interoception, which involves recognising states of our body, for example, when we are hungry or when we need the toilet. In individuals with ASD, the brain sometimes makes sense of sensory information differently to those without ASD. Everybody is different, and therefore individuals will experience things differently and respond in different ways. In some cases, the senses may work too well and the brain receives too much information, what is known as hypersensitivities, or not well enough, where the brain doesn't get enough information, known as hyposensitivities. When the senses are hyper, you may find that individuals with ASD rock, flap, spin, or hit their ears, for example, as a way of trying to block out the overload that they can't tolerate, and to help them calm down or relieve the pain. In cases where the senses are hypo, individuals may make or seek out noises, bang objects, etc., as a way of causing more sensations and getting the senses to work better.
I'm going to meet a friend of mine. He's going to help us understand how important our senses are in everyday life. Like you and me, he learns about the world through his senses. Most people know about 5 of our senses: sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. Each of these senses brings us important information. For example, touch helps you know the difference between the feel of a butterfly landing on your arm and the feel of a friend tapping you on the shoulder. There are also 2 other senses that are very important. One is our sense of balance and movement, which comes from our vestibular system. This sense helps us move our body without falling, so we can do activities like walking, riding a bicycle, or even sitting correctly at a desk. It is also the sense that lets you know that you're moving very fast on a roller coaster, even if your eyes are closed. We also get important information from our body position sense, or proprioception. This sense gives you information about the position of your body parts without having to look at them. It helps you do activities like walking upstairs without having to look down at your feet. This sense also tells you how much force to use when doing things like picking up and cracking open an egg. Putting together information from all of these senses makes it possible for us to participate in everyday activities. By integrating or combining all the information we get from our senses, we can make sense of the world around us and successfully move through and interact in our world. Most tasks involve a number of our senses working together. For example, when playing baseball, you need your sense of body position to know how you are standing and the position of your arms holding the bat. You need your sense of touch to grip and move the bat correctly in your hands. Your sense of vision lets you follow the ball with your eyes and helps your body know when to get ready to swing the bat. And your balance and movement sense helps you to stay upright, hit the ball, and run the bases.
Special interests can be anything from weird to wonderful. Some of the more common examples of special interests in children might include lining up toys, for example, cars and trains, drawing, counting, collecting, fact-based interests such as dinosaurs, gaming characters, and types of cars or trains. Often the special interest will consume a large amount of the individual's time, and they will know obscure and specific facts and fine details about their topic. Some common strategies that are useful when a child has ASD include the following. Structure and routine. As we have learnt, the more predictable a situation is, the less anxiety-provoking it is for a child, as they will know what is going to happen. This links to ensuring that we prepare these children for changes to that routine. For example, talking through a novel situation step by step and doing lots of transition work. Consideration should be given to the environment to identify what things might be overwhelming a child from a sensory perspective, and therefore distracting them from learning. Consider the use of sensory breaks to allow a child with ASD to meet their sensory needs before returning to a task. It is so important to have a child-centered approach. By really understanding a child and their personal strengths and qualities, and listening to their perspective of what is working and what is not working, will help to really hone in on making school a positive experience for them. It also highlights the importance of patience and understanding, taking that extra bit of time to make sure that the child is okay and knows what is going to happen, will provide the necessary reassurance and guidance that they may require. To finish, let's have a look at a case study, 7-year-old Edward. We will find out a bit about what is going on for Edward, and then we will try and identify some signs and symptoms of autism. We will then think about what school could do to make things better for him. So Edward is a 7-year-old boy who lives at home with his parents and his younger sister. Edward has been having difficulties at home and school, which are getting more difficult to manage. Edward loves trains, and he will talk about them constantly. He has a collection of over 100 trains at home, which he will not let his sister touch or play with. Edward likes watching YouTube videos about how trains work. He will do this for hours, and his parents find it hard to get him to do anything else, like things like getting dressed or eating a meal, for example. Edward gets very, very distressed when it's bath time, as he says that the water hurts his skin. He hates having his teeth brushed, as he says that the toothpaste burns his mouth. Edward will only eat chicken nuggets and chips, and he is able to detect what brand it is by looking, smelling, and tasting the food. Edward finds his school uniform itchy and constantly pulls at his collar. He doesn't have very many friends at school, and the children in school find it difficult to play with him because he always likes to play by his rules. Edward can often get into trouble for being rude to other children and staff in school. For example, he will make comments about people's weight and appearance. The teachers are finding it hard to get Edward to engage in schoolwork because he doesn't seem interested and instead will bring conversations back to trains. Edward gets very anxious when he does not know what will happen in school and asks questions constantly to find out what they will be doing later on in the school day. When an unplanned event occurs in school, Edward gets very distressed and takes a long time to calm down. He always likes to walk the same way home from school and has to stop at specific points along the way to point things out. Okay, so that's a bit about Edward. If you'd like to pause the video and have a think about the 2 questions. So, to answer the first question, what are some of the signs and symptoms of ASD you might have identified? Some things you may have picked up on would have been his special interest in trains, some sensory issues around touch and taste, having difficulties with friendships, lacking empathy, needing routine, and having difficulty regulating his emotions. Of course, there are others too. And to answer the second question, what could school do to help? Well, Edward may benefit from visual timetables to help reduce anxiety about what is going to happen in the school day. He may need preparation and enhanced transition work to help reduce anxiety about change. Edward might actually be more interested and focused in the lesson or task if it involves trains, so maybe incorporate his interests into the lessons. Edward would also benefit from social skills interventions groups in school to help him learn to share and take turns. He might benefit from work in his emotional regulation to help him develop effective coping strategies. He would also benefit from staff having a flexible attitude to his uniform so that he's better able to focus on his work if he's not having to wear something that's really uncomfortable. He could also be given a pass to access the canteen 10 minutes sooner than the other children so that he doesn't feel overwhelmed by smells and tastes and noises going on in the canteen. Thank you for listening to this presentation. Have a look at some of these useful websites on the slide for more tips about ASD.